Is there any hope left for Big 12 teams trying to jump to the Big 10 in conference realignment? That's one of the topics I tackled today with Travis Hines, who works for the Des Moines Register and the Ames Tribune and does a great job covering Iowa State. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do right now. I am John Kurtz. On this channel, we talk college football, specifically conference realignment right now every single day. And I try to give the Big 12 a voice because they don't have much of one nationally right now. So I mentioned Travis Hines does a great job, does some radio covering Iowa State as well as his work with the Des Moines Register and the Ames Tribune. And I had a chance to catch up with him on all things Iowa State right now, where the Clones are at, and if they still feel like the Big Ten is any kind of legitimate possibility. So here is the conversation. What's the current mood in Ames right now? Is it more in best season ever mode because of the enormously high expectations this year for the Clones on the football field, or is it still worried about the future and where things are going in conference realignment?
I think it's a little bit split right now, and it's probably not 50-50, but there is, I think the closer we get towards the season, the more people are trying to put their realignment concerns on the back burner because, as you mentioned, they've got a top 10 team for the first time in their history, coming off the best season in program history, and, really looking ahead to the 2021 year where, everything is on the table from the college football playoff to a Big 12 title. So I think people are starting to focus in more on that. But certainly when you look at the landscape and you look at what Iowa State has versus what's being valued both by other conferences and by their TV partners, certainly people are very, very wary of being left out in the cold because 10 years ago when this first cropped up with the Big Ten's expansion, it looked very likely that if the Big 12 were to implode, Iowa State would find itself in a very precarious position and potentially dropping down in terms of stature. I think they're maybe in a little bit better position this time, but certainly those worries are very real and they're very acute for Iowa State fans. But as we get closer to September 4th, I think that's garnering more and more of the focus because there's so much at stake in this 2021 season.
We just hit on something I wanted to ask about, and that is how different truly do you feel it is now versus 10 years ago because of what Matt Campbell's been able to do with the program and the fact that right now, they're as hot as they have been in my lifetime, frankly.
Yeah, you look at where the football program is right now, it looks like a legitimate Big 12 contender year in and year out. And, Matt Campbell has called it that before he got there. If you look over the course of, whatever time frame you want to put on it, 25 years, 50 years, you can even go back 120 years, that Iowa State was a laughingstock for college football. And if you look at the evidence, he's right. It's just not been a program that has rated with any sort of even regional relevance in its history, and certainly not national relevancy. But as you see what they've built here, obviously not only is this program on the ascendancy from where it's been, they've built it slowly, not slowly, but they've built it methodically where it's really gotten better each and every year. And this feels like maybe a culmination here. But their recruiting is as good as it's ever been. Their strength and conditioning program, they made a change to a year ago, and they are absolutely wild about it. And I think when you look at programs making the next step, that's for where Iowa State will be. It's not only winning on the field, but it's producing pros because that can get you that next level of recruit. And that a lot of that happens in the strength and conditioning room. So they feel like they're built to last here with what they've got. But the problem is, at least in terms of realignment, is because this has never happened at Iowa State before. There's over 100 years of history where this has never happened. It's only happened with one coach. And as we saw this summer, there are reports that the NFL teams are going to throw crazy amounts of money at Matt Campbell. And I would imagine some blue blood college programs are going to throw crazy amounts of money at him, whether it's this winter or subsequent winters. And the question then becomes, if you're the Big Ten or you're the Pac-12 or if you're an ESPN executive, how much is it worth for Iowa State football? Do you value that as that culture, that program has changed in the last 5 years where whoever the head coach is, it's sustainable success going forward? Or do you worry that if Matt Campbell were to leave, and maybe he never will, but if he were to, do you backslide into where Iowa State was for the previous 95% of its existence? So it's great for Iowa State football this year to be where they're at. I don't know how much that's worth to whether TV execs or other conference leaders across the country. It's a huge question for Iowa State, and one I'm not sure anyone has a great answer for.
Travis Hines is talking with me right now from the Des Moines Register and the Ames Tribune. I mean, on that front then, how much legitimate optimism is there still right now? And I know this feels different after the Big Ten, Pac-12, ACC alliance that we saw happen on Friday, but how much optimism is there still there for a Big Ten spot being available at some point?
I don't know that there was ever optimism. I think people have been pretty clear-eyed in that the things that Iowa State can offer is not necessarily a huge value add for the Big Ten. I mean, obviously, some of it's just bad luck for Iowa State. Just where they are geographically, absolutely surrounded by Big Ten programs on every side but south, and you're in a low population state that you share with a member of the Big Ten for the last 120 years, and you don't have a huge football brand, you don't have huge TV eyeballs to deliver. So I think people realize that is a long shot, even though it would be the perfect solution, because that would be geographically, culturally, and just convenience sake. That's the best place for Iowa State to be in, because you can get to Lincoln, you can get to Minneapolis, Iowa City, Madison, Champaign, on down the line, pretty easily from Ames, Iowa, and from Central Iowa. But I think people realize that, yes, they're an AAU school at Iowa State. Yes, they're a geographic and cultural fit. But at the end of the day, this is about dollars and cents, or at least it has been in these realignment waves of the last decade or so. And from that standpoint, it's a real question if Iowa State is a value add. So I don't know that there was any true optimism there. I think people really do look at that as the long shot Hail Mary miracle scenario. But I think most people are realistic to know that the probability of that is probably low, and that you're really, to be realistic, you're going to have to find a solution elsewhere.
Travis Hines again talking with me from the Des Moines Register and the Ames Tribune. I will say this, Travis, and we have a lot of fun with the Farmageddon rivalry here on the show. Certainly on Twitter, I always enjoy the back and forth there, and it's made things much more interesting between the two schools. As a part of that, we've had our moments making fun of Jamie Pollard before, but I have to admit, the guy seems like a tremendous leader, and to have him at this point, at least the message that he delivered, kind of that fireside chat video that they had out a couple of weeks ago, I mean, it seems to me like he is a pretty good leader to have in this type of position. What's your perception there of how strong he is in this kind of scenario?
Yeah, I think from a standpoint of the fans after, 16 or 17 years of Jamie Pollard as athletic director, trust him to navigate this as much as you could probably ever look for a fan base to do that, because they've seen him get them through troubled times before. And I think when you look at the landscape across the country, having a guy with a lot of longevity, having a guy that's respected by his peers in the industry, that's connected as part of the men's basketball committee and has some prestigious posts, that's really helpful. But again, I think the question is he's dealt a specific set of facts about Iowa State. And I think Iowa State fans are fiercely proud of who they are, but they also recognize, they're not Ohio State. They're not even Iowa, that they feel like they've maybe surpassed in some areas. It's certainly, Iowa State used to be a much smaller enrollment than Iowa State. There's now more people going to Iowa State than Iowa. The alumni base is growing faster. Or this state, even when I arrived here, 11 or 12 years ago to start covering Iowa State, it was overwhelmingly Hawkeye fans in this state, and it has quickly moved to more closer to 50-50. But at the end of the day, what they have is that valued by the people that they need to impress. I think that's the question here. But I do think Iowa State fans do trust Jamie Pollard to make it happen. I think, again, the issue here is that it's not just Jamie Pollard. It's Bob Bowlesby. It's the 7 other league ADs and presidents. And how do you navigate this when there are so many different variables at play? And I think that's the difficult thing for people, to really kind of grasp, is that you can do everything you want, or you can do everything right if you're Iowa State. And at the end of the day, you still need a dance partner. And that the question is how do you find that and make it work, expeditiously to where you're not being left out in the cold, or that you're not left in a diminished conference. And all of a sudden, instead of having $100 million athletic department budget every year, you're looking at something more like 60 or 70, because that's a completely remade athletic department at that point.
All right, I really appreciate Travis Hines' time. I will link to his Twitter account in the description here of this video. You should give him a follow. if you care about Big 12 football. And Iowa State, if you care about national college football, you need to be following Travis Hines this year with the Clones ranked in the top 10 in the preseason. That's a clip from my daily radio show. You can listen to my daily radio show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Just search the Game KMAN to find it there. You can also follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz, JLKURTZ. I'm on it way too often. You'll see plenty on there if you want more college football content. As always, I appreciate you guys that do subscribe, like, and comment on the video. That all helps me out a lot as well. And I will talk to you guys soon.